This week on the True Geordie podcast, we have a UK exclusive with one of the WWE's most legendary superstars ahead of his induction into the Hall of Fame. This man was a 4-time WWE champion, 3-time World Heavyweight champion, 6-time Tag Team Champion, a Royal Rumble winner, an undefeated WrestleMania streak that made him a household name. With a height of 6 feet 10 inches tall, weighing 309 pounds. He goes by many names: the Dead Man, the American Badass, Mark Calaway, but you'll know him as the Undertaker. Mate, I'm a fucking huge fan of you. I'm so buzzing for this. I'm delighted to have you on.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
I remember watching you when I was very, very small, and you just brought my imagination to life, man. And I'm so grateful for the time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying so, man. That's awesome. You're definitely not small anymore.
Well, that's kind of your fault as well, all these tattoos and all of that, you know, because when I was a kid, I used to look at you larger than life figures and think, God, I'd love to be that big. So I made sure that I was.
Well, there you go, man. Yeah. Good job.
This is you're about to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. To say that's deserved is an understatement. You're a Mount Rushmore wrestler. You know, you're the top 4 of all time. But how does it feel to be going in there with so many great names?
It's really humbling, actually. When you think of the list of people that are in the Hall of Fame, the Andre the Giants, the Ultimate Warriors, the Hogans, the Ric Flairs. I mean, the greats of our industry, all take residence there at the Hall of Fame. And to be included with names like that for me, and I use those guys, most of those guys are a litlittle before me. So those were the guys that, that I looked up to, that inspired me to want to be the best that I could be. So to be included with those kind of guys is just, it's humbling. And, I'm not really sure how it's all going to hit me that night. I have a good feeling because I'm already amped up about it. And, it really is. That's the best way. I consider myself considerably blessed and very fortunate and humbled to be inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame.
I'm very grateful that you've came out and been a bit more open with how you feel. And I watched the Last Ride documentary, which was unbelievably well done. I loved that. And what really hit home was that 30-year period of you being this tough guy and who doesn't show too much of emotion. I always wondered, how's this guy done that so long? And, no matter how beat up you got and all the rest of it. And what really struck me was just how much this means to you, your career, your character. It's amazing.
They say when you do something that you love, you never work a day in your life. And as minus the surgeries and minus the injuries and all that, which is part of the game, I have no regrets for any of that. I mean, I had such a passion for this industry and this business that, it was just what I had to do. And the approach that I took to try and keep that character viable for all those years, those early years, I lived the character all the time. I just, anywhere you saw me, if you saw me in public, even though, I may not have the same hat and coat on, there's a good chance that I'm going to have a black coat and maybe some type of black hat on. I mean, there wasn't a big variance. And in my head, those are the things that I had to do to make that character I had to give it legitimacy and make it viable.
Yeah.
There was a real big disconnect with me when I would see people do one thing on TV and then be something completely opposite in their personal life. And this is long before there were cell phones and everything that you did was on the internet. This is before that, but it struck me then like, I can't go out. I can't be this dark, brooding character and then be in the airport in a Hawaiian floral shirt and flip flops. I mean, it would people like, oh, okay, he's acting. This is all bullshit.
That really hit me though. Like, as in, people look at wrestlers like these big meatheads a lot of the time, and they sort of prejudge you. And for some reason, people have this notion that big men can't be clever, can't be creative, can't be whatever. But I really got a lot of appreciation for what a creative brain you have and almost method acting. I just wondered, like, sort of, how did you develop the character? What kind of thought process did you go? Because obviously there was the American Badass and you pivoted depending on how the industry was going. So yeah, how did that creative process go for you?
So when I was given the character, so it was presented to me on storyboards with the original likeness, which was Vince's brainchild. It was his character, and then it was based off the old Western Undertaker. The two guys go out on Main Street. They have a gunfight. One guy loses. The Undertaker comes out, measures them for their box kind of deal. Mm-hmm. So that was the original concept. But so I'm presented that, right? I'm given this gift, and then so I start thinking about it, and first thing I do is I look at the current product. Like, all right, who's on top? Which at the time when I came into WWF at the time, WWE, you've got Ultimate Warrior, you've got Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake, Randy Macho Man Savage. These are all our top guys at the time. So one thing I had to figure out is, all right, how am I going to separate myself from these guys? Okay. I've already got, and most all of them, other than Jake, everybody was, over the top with that stereotypical professional wrestler interview. Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you something, brother. When I get to, right. Anytime.
Let me tell you something, brother.
That's what they think. That's their interview, right?
Yeah.
Well, when I get you at the Civic Auditorium, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. That was out. I was like, no, that's not going to work here. So I've always noticed that when people are screaming and yelling, you might look and see what the noise is, but you really, you're not too interested. But when people talk low and slow, that's when people lean in because they want to, what is this guy? What's he saying? And, so that was one of the big things. I'm not going to be a screamer. I'm not going to be a guy over the top and saying brother every other, that's just, I do it in my personal life, but on TV. And then I started studying characters like, like I'd watch Friday the 13th and Jason Voorhees and these indestructible monster characters, right? Mm-hmm. Michael Myers. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like I can do this. I can get hit and I can get beat. But when I set up, it's just like, oh, people are going to lose their mind because, those things usually keep people down. And now this guy just keeps coming, he just sets up and he's just like this indestructible monster. So, I'm studying all this and I'm putting it up against what everybody else is doing. And there's just a stark contrast in what I was doing and what I was doing, all the way down to even to the color, the black and the gray, just real monotone colors where everybody else is getting as colorful and as loud. And, I was trying to be as far from everybody else as I could. So I studied all of those gory movies and all those characters and tried to figure out, okay, what can I take from Jason Voorhees and what can I take from Michael Myers and incorporate it and make it my own? So there was a lot of studying done and how to take those things, make them mine, and then make them work in the realm of sports entertainment. So it was really challenging because up until the point, before I became Undertaker, I was an athlete. Like my calling card was, I'm a big dude that can move and I can do all these things. And when I first got there, my first couple of, I had a couple of matches before I debuted at Survivor Series. And, I'm still doing leapfrogs and drop kicks and all this stuff. And I was like, it doesn't feel right. This guy doesn't, this guy needs to be slow and at the right time, then bam, then do something quick, fast, and athletic, and then go right back. So you catch, what just happened there? Yeah. Right. Because they get lulled in like, oh man, he's just plodding and slow. And then, then you hit him with something athletic. And
when you're on the top rope, for example, you're walking along those ropes, you literally looked supernatural. To see a 7-foot guy do that, it was like, what the hell?
Yeah, those, that was, I borrowed that from Don Jardine, who he wrestled under the name of the Spoiler. And when he retired, I knew when I wrestled him very early on in my career. And when he retired, I said, that's mine. I'm taking that. Yeah. And so that's how that came about. But you're right. I was just trying to be different and present something that hadn't been done yet in the wrestling world.
Yeah. I've got vivid memories of Paul Bearer like talking and like and his voice being so different. And I'm a young kid and I'm thinking, damn, this guy's scary. Like actually ghoulish,
creepy, right? Yeah, ghoulish and creepy. That's why it was such a great blend, because you had the high pitched squeaky voice of Paul Bearer. And then you had, the guy that just closed it off at the end with the low, the rest in peace or whatever. And it was such a great contrast. Yeah. It captivated people's attention, and it was like, what kind of morbid thing are they going to say? They're going to worms eating your rotting flesh is, I take your soul to hell. I mean, who says that, right? Yeah. Who says that in wrestling?
Yeah, but looking back at it, like we watch a movie, we know it's not real, but when it's so good, it doesn't matter. And I look back at that era and the things that you were doing, and it was irrelevant whether or not what you were actually saying was a real performance. It felt as real as possible to my age group especially. And as you seem to nail that tweaking of the character. Like, people give credit to Madonna for this sort of stuff, but you were doing it. Like, you were ever so slightly just tweaking it, and then you had that Ministry of Darkness period where, we seen a bit more of your face, but it was still the dead man. And then you had if I'm right in thinking, an injury, and then you brought out the American Badass. Now, the American Badass, I was around 13, 14. I thought you were the coolest person who ever, I was like, this guy, I love it. What made you decide to go so different?
Well, first, to go back to the beginning of your statement, I want to say thank you for that compliment, because that's always my goal, is to make people forget that it's entertainment. So thank you for that. That
was terrifying.
That made my day, actually, that you said that, because that was always my mindset.
Oh, yeah. Even
with such an over the top character, is to let people forget that it's entertainment, and let them get so wrapped up in it they believe it.
And amongst those superhero guys, you were the perfect scary guy, for sure. They needed you desperately.
Yeah, that it was, because Hogan had gone through everybody. Ultimate Warrior had gone through everybody. They had nobody that was like, oh, okay, now what you going to do, big fellas? Now you got this guy come along. So the American Badass, several things were going on there. One, I got hurt. I injured my groin, and then right close to coming back from my groin injury, I tore a pec. So I was out most of that whole year, leading into the American Badass. Well, what was going on was was the Attitude Era. I mean,
yeah,
you've got Stone Cold, who's cutting these incredible promos that people can really identify with, right? I mean, it's like real life with a little bit of with a little bit of gas behind it. Mm-hmm. You got The Rock cutting these unbelievable promos. All these promos are just, they are so good. I think I would have survived, but I wouldn't have thrived if I had not taken a break and took, as good as the character is, you're kind of boxed in too, mm-hmm. with what you can do and what you can't do. It's hard for the Undertaker to be in the ring while The Rock is talking about poontang pie. You know what I mean? And to have some type of retort that the Undertaker could give. Mm-hmm. So one, it was a period for me to just take a deep breath and do something different for a minute.
Were you nervous about switching it up?
Oh my gosh. That was a big roll of the dice right there. I mean, it was huge. But I felt that it was so necessary to give them something. Now I kept a few, I mean, for the real fan, like there were a few nuances that I kept and I brought along with me. And I was fortunate and smart enough that I kept the name. I was still the Undertaker, but then we added the American Badass onto it.
Yeah.
So there was always that link.
You had some kick-ass entrance music as well. I loved it.
Yeah, great. I mean, a Kid Rock, and then
the Rolling one. So
so that was really that was really cool. I got riding out on a motorcycle. I mean, I can't get much cooler than that, right? Yeah. But it just gave me a chance to compete on the same level. Like I could cut promos with Austin, and I could mm-hmm. Cut promos, and I could threaten them in a completely different way than what the Undertaker would do. So it was just a minute for me to regroup, and then always had the mindset that I would go back, and then all that would be retro, and it would all be new again. And it worked out. Fortunately, it worked out the way it was supposed to. But it was a huge roll of the dice.
It's funny because when you're talking about doing what everyone else wasn't doing, I feel like that's kind of how Austin got his success as well. Kind of in his heyday, he kind of looked at what everyone else was doing and thinking, I need to pivot and go in this other direction. In regards to the man behind Undertaker, we got a great insight into that on the last ride. But during that heyday, you were on the road for as long as anyone, for so many years. How did that impact your personal life?
Yeah, so that's tough, man. There was I can safely say there was an 8-year stretch where I averaged over 250 dates a year on the road. And as you can imagine, and you're so wrapped up in it, and I'm so wrapped up in this character. Like I can't just come home. Like we would be out 40 days. I'd come home for 5. At the beginning of the third day off, I'm ready to go. I mean, I'm just conditioned to always be on the go. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't tuned in, to my wife at the time. Mm-hmm. And probably one of the biggest, negative aspects of, was my oldest son. I missed him growing up.
Oh,
and it's, I wish I could have been a better man, mm-hmm. And figured that out. Mm-hmm. But and I've heard Austin talk about this as well. Mm-hmm. You can't, I shouldn't say can't, but it's just hard to be that guy and not be that guy all the time. It's hard to shut it down. The worst thing back then, you get going and you have this momentum and you get hurt. That would drive us absolutely insane, because somebody else is coming up. Somebody else is going to want your spot. So you're rehabbing like crazy. And all this time where you have time to spend with your family and do things, the only thing that you're thinking about is getting healthy enough so that I can get back out there, reclaim my spot, and go on and do this. And so that's my relationship with my kids early. My older kids, they had to pay a sacrifice for me to do and become what I am. And you can't look back.
Yeah.
You learn from your mistakes. I was fortunate enough, that I remarried Michelle and I. We have now we have young children. So I was blessed enough to get a second chance to be a dad and be a husband. But I had no business. I had no business being married
at that time,
and trying to build this character and this legacy. It's really difficult to do.
It's the curse of a high achiever, I guess. You become obsessed, and then it's very hard to split your brain up and try and be a good father when you're just obsessed with what this is, and then you're worrying about people chasing you. It makes a lot of sense. And to be fair, like I grew up without a lot of time with my dad, but now I'm a grown man. I get it. A man's got to follow his own path, and I think that hopefully your son understands that now he's older.
Our relationship now is good, but the point to that is I missed so much. I wasn't there for the ball games and all that. So I was fortunate enough that he realized that he wanted to give me a second chance. So, that was the greatest gift. One of the greatest gifts that anyone's ever given me is that second chance to be a dad to him. My kids have they've had to pay the price for my success.
Well, that's beautiful that he's done that. And I'm really happy to hear that. And I remember reading Brock Lesnar's book, actually, and him describing how hard it was being on the road. And, we all look at what a great athlete Brock Lesnar is, and he was saying how hard it was just to maintain that. Like, by the time he started his UFC career, he was so beat up, and, he said he was having to drink a lot of vodka and take pain pills just to get by. And I'm thinking, Brock Lesnar, wow, it just shows like, everyone can look indestructible, but that road life can beat you up. I mean, what was your body like over the years? Because I seen the injuries and them drilling into your knee on that documentary, and I was like, Jesus, like, we don't see what these guys really go through.
Yeah, everybody obviously has their preconceived ideas about what wrestling is and what it isn't. It boils down to this: the human body is not made to take that kind of abuse day in and day out. Now, I mean, you think about, and I've just started using this phrase, and because it's just really dawned on me here in the last, as I've started talking and opening up more. You have to realize within any given wrestling match, and it just happened the other day, you're 2 inches away from something catastrophic happening. Big E the other day almost broke. Well, he did break his neck.
That was scary to watch. That, Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah. So now you multiply that 250 times, those kind of things happen. And just when everything goes right, just the pounding that the body takes, the lack of rest, the incredible amount of traveling, you're constantly worn down, and then, and through my era, and, you look for any way at all to alleviate some of the pain, because that you've got to go out and do it again the next night. And that's one of the great things about, and I always thank my fans, they were the reasons a lot of times that I could get up off of the training table. And I would, people have made reference to it. MVP, he'd always tell me, I can't wait to have that walk, that old gunslinger walk that you have. Like all day, before I go out, I limp. I walk with a limp, right? When the bells, when the lights go down, the bong goes off, the limp goes away, and I go out and I do my thing. But it's hard on your body physically. It's hard on your mind, because you know that you're hurt and you got to go out and you do things. Fortunately, our business has evolved. We have, now we have trainers and we have doctors that travel with us, and there are protocols in place when you do get hurt. So that is one of the greatest evolutions of our business, is that you have to, if you do get hurt, you have to get cleared before you're allowed to get back in the ring. Whereas early on, it was, one that you didn't tell anybody that you were hurt because you didn't want to take any time off, because you didn't want to not get paid, and you didn't want somebody coming in and take. So it's a bloody, vicious cycle. You're out there working hurt, and when you're working hurt, you're trying to protect one thing, and then you're going to end up hurting something else. So it kind of like a domino effect of injuries, and that's something that you have to deal with and contend with.
Yeah, I seen on the last ride the Goldberg finishing move that didn't quite work, and your neck, it looked jacked up. Like, scary that.
Yeah, that was one of those things that happened. I mean, he's done that move a million times, and I think I don't know if he was concussed at that point yet. And part of that, is because I'm not working a full schedule at that point. Like, I'm not kicking on all my cylinders where I can recognize the fact that, okay, maybe we shouldn't do this. I'm working off of, people are expecting, big things because it's Goldberg and it's Undertaker and it's the first time that we've ever fought. And that's what I'm thinking, right? I'm just thinking, like, I got to pay this off. And, maybe if I had, if I was working more often, I would have recognized the fact that maybe we shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But that was one of those instances where 2 inches, I don't get up.
I've heard you describe the locker room in the Attitude Era and how things would be settled in an old school way. And, sometimes people would look to you to be the guy to pull people in line. And it made me wonder, like, I look at this generation, the modern generation, a bit of a snowflake generation. Like, I wondered if you look back at the old days and now look at the new school and think, things have changed a little bit. And if so, how have they changed?
Yeah, I think things have changed. And I can't just say that it's changed in the wrestling. I think in all sports, it's a different generation. I mean, it's just call it evolution if you want. One, I don't think the guys are leading the same lifestyles that guys in the past did. One, they can't, because everything that they do, there's somebody somewhere doing this. I mean, it's just, so I feel bad for them, because a lot of times they can't go off and blow off steam somewhere after they work, because they're constantly under some type of surveillance from people, where I didn't have to worry about that, right? Because there wasn't cell phones and all that. When I came up, it was the locker room was a lot different. It was pretty crusty. You drove everywhere, right? You didn't fly very often. So there were guys that had, there were a few guys that had knives in their bags, guns in their bags. It was a different group of men. I'm not saying one's better or one's worse, but they just had a different way of settling things, right? Like, if there was a disagreement, they'd go into the shower, and that's where everything got handled, right? Either you discussed it, you come to agreement, or you threw down, or, just like what happened to Brody over in Puerto Rico. I mean, he got stabbed and he died, over a disagreement. So
it's pretty serious shit, that.
Oh yeah, man. It was, and that was common fare. I mean, not to that degree, But there was a lot of that happened back in the day. It was when I'm breaking in. I'm talking about the late 80s and even before. Those guys didn't put up with any kind of crap, right? And weren't afraid, to call somebody out. I think today's athlete is just that. They're athletes. They've been trained to do this, and I don't think they have this. I'm sure there's some, but I don't think they have the same bad habits that a lot of us had.
I feel like some of them are lacking that grit, though, that you guys had. Like, you guys were believable bad motherfuckers, whereas now, like, some of them have got the muscles and all of that, but they don't have the character that you could tell some of you guys had done horrible jobs and had that mean streak, that working class thing about you. Whereas now, if you manufacture a star and just try and put them and make everyone like them, it just sometimes doesn't click, and I think that's partly why you just don't have as many stars these days. Maybe I'm wrong.
No. That was actually going to be the thing about grit. Was going to be the next sentence out of my mouth.
Oh, right.
It is. I feel like there is a level of grit that is missing from today's product, and and I don't know that it's anybody's fault. We all aged out, right? And so that new group has come up, but it to your point though, when you watch Brock wrestle, you're interested, like, because I mean, he's got this background not only as an amateur wrestler, professional wrestler, mixed martial artist. Brock doesn't do a bunch of crazy moves. Brock manhandles your ass.
Yep.
You get in there and you get thrown around and you get smashed. And even Roman has a little bit of that to him. And when he wants to, Randy has that to him when he wants to. But a lot of the younger talent, it's that it's the evolution of that comic book era, the superhero era. And I think that's what they drive. That's what's their motivation. And that's what their inspiration is. And they didn't have to, come up and bust heads in bars and figure out how they're going to eat and things like that. And, good
it's
or
ironic,
bad,
though. It's ironic that they're pushing towards that comic book era now, because if the title holder is Brock Lesnar, and the other guy obviously is Roman, who's holding the other title. Sorry, so the two guys at the top are the ones who are doing it differently, like similar to you did back in the day. And so if I'm one of those superstars, I'm thinking, I need to do that. I need to be more tough. And that's what people respond to. They don't, wrestling fans don't need to be patronized. They just need it to be believable. It's no different to watching a movie. And I think that's what obviously you did so well, because who the hell wants to fight a 7-foot guy looking like you? Right. We didn't need it to be real. It needed to look real. And you talk about Brock Lesnar, what you basically made his career. You were they were building him up, and he had that big feud with you before he went off and became the MMA guy. Right. But you gave him such a push. What did it feel like to get in the ring with this guy, because he looks hella intimidating, but also then watch him take all that juice and go to the UFC?
It was fun watching his ascent. It was fun being in the ring, because Brock, especially his first time through, you look at him and you think there's no way that any human being built like that looks like that, can move like that. So it was always fun to work with him. I had a long talk with Brock, and he came to me and he wasn't happy. Brock's not a people person. I don't know if you've picked that up. I mean, he's not, happy cowboy Brock is a little different than Brock.
The real Brock
keeps to himself. He lives up in Saskatchewan or wherever he lives, up in the, and hunts and fishes and does all that. but it was, it's a tough life traveling the way we do and being present. Like we don't always have charter planes, and we have to go through the public airports and so we're always constantly, around people, and it becomes difficult because certain days you just hurt, you like you said earlier, he felt like he was all beat up by the time he got to the UFC.
Okay.
And it's hard to put on that facade sometimes when you feel like crap, you haven't slept and you haven't eaten properly, and you got somebody coming up, hey, can I take a picture? Can I, some people can handle it and grit their teeth and do it. Some people can't. And I think Brock was at a point where I think he wanted to do something different. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I told him, and I really hadn't told this story very often. He was thinking about going to play pro football. Mm. And I was like, Brock, look, you got to do what's right for Brock. Everyone's going to be pissed that you're going to leave, and they've put all this money and this push behind you. But if you don't go do this, you're going to look back one day with the what ifs. Right. And, I don't know how much influence it had. He did end up leaving. He tried football, didn't work. He ends up in the UFC. But I didn't hold any grudge because I always, I guess in the back of my mind felt like he would be back someday.
Yeah.
It just usually the way it works out. But I do know that you can't live with what ifs.
Yep.
It'll eat you up, right?
Exactly.
So, I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a biggest problem as most people did with it.
Really? Was there some serious venting going on in the back? Like, I assume Vince especially was like, there goes the golden goose that I made The Rock lose to him. I've got Undertaker to lose to him, and now he's fucked off out the door. Yeah.
As a business sense. Yeah. That's tough to put those resources behind somebody and then them leave. But, it's all come back around. And, Brock's, it's worked out great for Brock, and it's worked out great for Vince. It just took longer than what I think everyone expected. But yeah, there was obviously a lot of heat on Brock leaving after all those guys doing the favor.
I'd love to do this again sometime, Taker. You are an absolute hero to me. This wasn't the longest interview I've done by any means, but it was one of my favorites. You are a person who I've looked up to literally for so much of my life. So I'm very grateful for this time, and I hope we can do it again for a longer one at some point if you've got any time free in the near future, mate.
Man, I would love to come back on and talk with you, talk about it, just boxing and MMA. And
absolutely.
I get tired of talking about myself sometimes. So, you know what? I'd love to come back and finish this someday.
Beautiful. Well, I'm a huge boxing and MMA fan. I know you've got your black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, we could definitely talk more about that. Big thank you today, the guest, The Undertaker, Mark Calaway, and hopefully we'll get part 2 very soon. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.